Office for the meeting, and we'll call the meeting to order at 10:05. And I'm going to quickly find this agenda. Jess, do you want to go first as far as introductions?
Sure. So my name is Jessica LeClaire, and I'm with the Institute for Sustainable Energy at Eastern Connecticut State University, and we oversee Sustainable CT. And I'm a program manager with Sustainable CT. So one of my roles is to connect with towns when you're in the program and sort of be a point of contact for you as you have your entire Sustainable CT journey, however long that might be.
Fantastic. I'm not sure, it's easier to go in order when we have like a Brady Bunch thing, but let's do Joanne next.
Hi, I'm Joanne Wasty. I don't know how much you want to know. I'm pretty new to Kent. We just moved here last March from California via New York City. So, we were in New York City, we bought our house in Kent, and then we ended up out in California for 1.5 years for work. So I've only lived in Kent during COVID, which has been kind of interesting.
Oh, wow.
A little difficult to know what the town is really like.
Yeah.
So anyway, but I do have, my background is I was a teaching artist. I'm an art teacher, and in New York City. So for over 20 years, I was a museum educator, a teaching artist, and also a public school art teacher for a long time. And I was really just involved in a lot of parent programming in equity and trying to get, parents that were not involved in schools more involved in their children's schools through the arts and things like that. So that's sort of my deal.
I have, I guess I'll go next. I have
and I live on Route 7 as well, and we didn't have power until 4:30. Yeah. So I feel your pain.
So just to dovetail off of your experience, I can remember my first and second grade art teacher. He was amazing, and still to this day has, I fully recognize that he sort of grew the buds of my love for art. I come from public health. The last 10 years I spent working for the State Office of Emergency Medical Services for the Department of Public Health. And then in November, I became the first selectman. It's my first time running a town, and it's been really interesting. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about the importance of public messaging. I have the 10 years of experience of emergency messaging from my previous life, but very different from what I think is going to be a big piece of what we're going to do going forward as far as educating the community and sharing, all the different programs and all the different sort of buckets of the sustainability project. So I'm very excited about that. Amanda, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, I'm Amanda Quaid. Like you, Joanne, we actually bought our house last February, about 2 weeks before the COVID lockdown happened. And we are in a 1-bedroom in Midtown Manhattan with a toddler. So that would have been a very different experience. We're now back and forth between New York City and our place on Botsford Road, just off of Route 7. I am, I'm an actor and a writer and a playwright and librettist, and I got into climate work around the time my daughter was born 3 years ago. I started with Extinction Rebellion and Sunrise Movement, and then last year I was trained by Al Gore's organization Climate Reality to give public talks and sort of do more kind of peer-to-peer outreach and also public lectures and demonstrations and stuff. So that's how I'm coming to this. I'm just a lay person who wants to know more about sustainability and more about what I can do to help the movement in Kent.
So Amanda, I don't know if we knew that we're neighbors.
Oh, are you on Botsford?
My house is the old green salt box at the corner of Botsford.
Oh, wow. Okay.
What number Botsford are you?
40. Yeah, we're all the way up the
Okay.
hill. Yeah.
Yep. That's
Is yours the house with all the signs out front? Is that the
Yeah.
one? Oh, I always wanted to drop you a note because during the
Oh.
election, it brought me so much happiness and solace to see that house. I was like, it really helped my soul to see your house. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Make me tear up. That was a longtime friend of mine, and I've had those signs for probably almost 20 years. I made them for my sister's wedding. She was getting married in Fairfield at this home, and you had to walk through all these paths. And she was like, how are people going to get from where they park to where the actual wedding is without getting lost? And I was like, oh, I can make some signs. And of course, my husband had to get pulled into it because I wasn't using a jigsaw at the time. I can now. So we made these really whimsical signs. And after the wedding, my sister went to throw them away. I'm like, no, you don't know how long it took me to make those signs. And so I took them up to the house, and they've been there in the barn ever since. And I would see them once or twice a year, and I'd go, I should just get rid of them. And then I think someday they'll be useful for something else. And when all the social justice started happening last summer, I was like, oh, I know exactly what I'm going to do with those signs. So it was a great process, and it's nice to get such positive feedback on them.
Yeah, I was going to write you a letter, but I didn't want to be weird. It made me feel so safe and so happy in the community. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. I'm so happy. Leanna, you want to go next?
Well, first, you have to tell us what these signs say.
So I'll send you a picture of them, but they're whimsical signs, sort of cut out in curves and with arrows, and they're very whimsical. And there's 8 of them, I think. And then there's a base sign that says, help me out, we stand for, right? Sometimes when you're doing a project, you get so into it that you forget the larger picture. One of them says, oh gosh, Black lives, brave women, the environment. Oh, I'm trying to remember. I see them every day when I pull in my driveway.
Equality, science, that kind of stuff.
Equality, LGBTQ, all different social justice topics and buckets. The idea came from Johanna Hayes, and she had posted a video on her Instagram back in the summer, and it was somebody driving by. It's sort of like the Burma shave sign concept. And so from that idea, I thought, wow, this is completely doable in my world right now of being busy, but I can, and I got Caitlin Lynch. I don't know if anybody on the call knows Caitlin Lynch. Leanne, you probably know her. She's an amazing person and has lots of creative juices flowing, and she's a doer. And so we made the signs, and actually while we were making them, we were in our backyard. She picked her head up, and we were trying to get the last little paint out of the paint pens that I have. And so I was like really focusing, and she goes, there's 2 dogs in the yard. And I spun around. There were 2 baby bears in the yard. And the mama bear came right after her. And all of a sudden I was like, those aren't dogs, those are bears. And she was like, I was like, just make a lot of noise. And off they went, they climbed up the trees and went off. It was pretty adorable and sort of, just the perfect kind of bucolic experience. So, Leanne.
Anyway, I'm Leanna Gant, and we have lived in Kent since the fall of 2017. We moved here from Pittsburgh, although we've kind of lived around a little bit. My husband and I are both attorneys. We were working in New York City. He took a job in-house with a startup in Pittsburgh. We were there for about 7 or 8 years. And then anyway, long story short, our son is a student at the Kent School, graduating on May 1, and that's what brought us here. My background, my undergraduate degrees in materials engineering, and then I went on to law school and practiced in the areas of science and technology law. I've always been drawn to, sciencey things, but also environmental issues. Working in materials, my area of expertise was plastics. And I remember when I was in college, I did a big project on recycling technology, and we're talking the early to mid 1980s. And my professor looked at me and he said, "Well, it's a well done report, but why do we care?" So, I guess I was ahead of my time, but anyway, so that's kind of where I come from. And it's as we're about to become empty nesters with a son going off to college, I suddenly find myself with time to more engage in more local activity. I think especially with environmentalism, what we as individuals can do is more at the local level. And obviously, Kent is a town full of active doers, and I want to join in. So that's me. I'm 57. My husband Dan. We all live here on we're on 341 Macedonia Road. We're about a mile west of the Kent School. And if everybody says, "Well, you live in the Rivkin house," so if anybody knows Janet Rivkin, that's, and I think somebody once said, and it won't become the Gant house until you move out of it. So anyway, that's us, and we live here with our 2 cats and our son, who I said is going to be going off to college. So we're here and we're active. My husband is also on the board at Templeton Farms. I'm on the board at Kent Affordable Housing. If anybody's interested in housing, Templeton Farms is kind of back behind the mobile station, and it's housing for the elderly. It's affordable housing for the elderly. And then Kent Affordable Housing also is here locally, and we are basically in the business of acquiring and building housing for people of, call it, modest income at any age level. So they can work in town and not have to commute an hour to work in Kent, because there's not a lot of affordable housing in Kent. And then Dan and I are also on the Democratic Town Committee.
Fantastic. Thanks, Leanna. Are you excited to have your son head off to school? Or
We are. He's been ready for a year now. I mean, and we've definitely got some senioritis going on. And he's excited. So it's kind of, you've nurtured your child and now it's time to take wing. And, he's got his interests and he's very excited. He still has to decide where he's going to school. He has exactly like a week to do that. But he's torn between 2 places. And I said, it's going to come down to a coin flip. I know it. So,
right. Oh,
it's hard this year because, they couldn't visit. And, you're really flying blind. A couple of the schools he's visited, but because we happened to be there and he was all of like 14 years old and we said, let's go look at this campus. So they weren't really real visits,
Mhm.
So that's been really hard for, I think, kids this year, because I worry that a lot of them are going to wind up somewhere and be unhappy because they didn't really get to do the full research. So
Yeah.
we'll keep our fingers crossed, because I think he's going to go to one of the schools he actually does know about. So, so that will be good.
That's good news. Jimmy, do you want to go next?
Sure.
You have a gorgeous view out there with all those windows.
Oh, thanks. My husband's Reno. Hi, I'm Jamie Kim. I'm out on 80 Kent Hollow Road, and I think we have a lot of connections. I actually started coming to Kent probably like 30 years ago because my dear friends, Bill and Catherine Bachrock, are the parents of my good friends who I went to high school with. So that's my connection. And then we moved up here like a dozen years ago. And then we became, I guess, full-time last year, post-COVID. My son is in 7th grade and goes to KCS. So my background, so I kind of have a lot of threads with all of you. I have a fine arts degree, but and then, coming out of fine arts degree, or coming out of art school, I did a lot of community organizing, and I even worked at NRDC. So I have sort of the social, racial justice, environmental background, but then I became a planner. And for the past 20 years, I was working in consulting, first at a transportation firm, and then more recently at a firm that focused on economic development and real estate, but also associated with that, I worked on a number of resiliency and sustainability projects with clients like the Governor's Office of Storm Recovery after Hurricane Sandy, working for a Rockefeller program called 100 Resilient Cities. And then I actually started my first foray into the public sector this past February as New York City Department of Transportation's Chief Strategy Officer. So yeah, so I kind of bring a lot of different viewpoints, but I'm really focused on, and can be helpful, I think, in terms of not just planning, but thinking about implementation, because that's really what I did for clients in my past life. Oh, Jean, you're got to unmute.
Thanks. I'm excited to have a planner on the team. Planners are often the sort of quiet, unsung heroes of progress from what I found just from the state government work that I do. Joanne, you want to bring us around the bend?
I already went.
Oh, you did already go.
but I can go again.
I haven't had enough coffee this morning. So Jess, and I don't mean to put you on the spot. Jess and I were trying to connect the last couple of days, and it seems every day here there's either I have my plan in the morning for what I'm going to do, and I get maybe 1 or 2 things in, and then something always comes in. I never in my wildest dreams thought it would be as busy as it is in this position. And you just sort of have to, whatever comes through the door or through the window, you just deal with. So Jess and I haven't been able to sort of have a huddle prior to this. So I'm a little bit putting you on the spot. And I imagine that you don't mind, that you're a roll with it kind of person anyway. I guess just overall program progress, like so here we are at our sort of the genesis of us. Where would you most recommend we start figuring out where we want to head? I guess is it's like, what's the first step to the next step to get us rolling?
Well, that's a great question. And before we dig in, I want to say this is a sustainability team of rock stars. You all have such incredible and diverse backgrounds. So I think that there's no stopping Kent.
We're very lucky right now.
So, Jean, last night, I heard there might have been a tornado in Kent. I thought, oh, that's probably why we weren't able to connect today.
Exactly.
That makes sense. So I actually, depending on where everyone is with regard to comfort level of like the nuts and bolts of sustainable CT, I have a 25-minute presentation that walks you through the whole program if you want, or we can go through the website, or we can just, go back and forth with questions and keep it casual. It's really up to you as to what's most valuable, but I can speak to your question, Jean, about how to move forward. And I think the first step is that this program is voluntary, and it's intended to be a tool for you to help advance your sustainability. So it's a certification program. So that can be a goal of yours to get certified by a certain date or a certain year. That would be great. It doesn't have to be. It could be that you want to use this program as a way to come together and create a vision or build on a vision that you have as a community, and use the actions to make that happen, or to forge partnerships with different groups and sort of weave that civic infrastructure. It's really up to you as to how the program can help you move forward. But before we sort of dig in, it's sort of a pick your own ending. What avenue would work best for you this morning in terms of using our time most effectively?
I'm really open. I'm very much, and I think Leanna knows this faster than anybody. I'm a collaborator, so I am everybody off mute. I'm so relieved, honestly, that everybody's on video. There's, we've spent so much time in the world of Zoom that many of us, me included, often just turn the video off and like either whether it's taking a breath, to because you've been on 8 Zooms during the day, or it's just, I need to not, I want to half be here so I can multitask. So I'm thrilled and grateful that you're all on video, but I want this very much to be a group discussion. We probably should appoint a chair, and I am not anywhere near needing to be the chair. I would like to have someone else. If there's someone else in the group, I would much prefer it to be someone else. From a management standpoint, I'm got a lot of plates moving in the air, but I also feel like the 4 of you are clearly, as Jess said, all rock stars. And I want to, there's sort of a rhythm that I've seen. I've been in Kent for 23 years. I still feel like a newcomer. And there's a rhythm of sort of, it's always the same people who come forward for a lot of committees. And I'm so thrilled to see these 4 faces. And I want you all to be sort of revealed to the town. And so I would love if anybody wants to step up to be the chair. And again, I think the 4 of us probably are thinking the same thing of having this be a really collaborative group. So the chair means not very much, because I'm rolling up my sleeves. I think everybody else is rolling up their sleeves. So I might, I would love for somebody to step forward and offer to be chair, and I would be there 150% to support the whole group, obviously. Anybody? Any thoughts?
Do it. So I'm not sure what it entails, but I'll do it.
Yeah, and I don't think any of us really knows what it entails.
Yeah. But I tell you, I wouldn't mind seeing Jess's little presentation, because I think, there's some, probably each in our own minds have ideas what this is, and she knows what it is. And so I kind of like to see kind of the official word on what Sustainable Connecticut
So
truly is. And
as a group, and something that I do know and have a lot of experience in and am a nerd of is Robert's Rules. So I'm going to make a motion that we appoint Leanna Gant as our chair. Somebody has to second the motion.
I second it.
All right, Amanda is seconding, and I'm taking notes for today, so I'll generate our first set of minutes. Any discussion? All those in favor, just raise your hand or say aye. Fantastic, we have a chair. Madam Chair. Congratulations.
thank you. So, I mean, does everybody want to see Jess's presentation to see what, the at least the state thinks we're doing?
Yeah, I think it would be a worthy 25 minutes for sure.
Yeah.
And just, I'm really eager to see the presentation, but I guess as we sort of the context for the presentation or this effort, I'm wondering, it seems like there's a lot of flexibility and I see Jessica nodding her head, which also, you know, is a little paralyzing when there's so many choices, right? So I wonder if, Jessica, you could also provide guidelines on how communities have best taken advantage of this program, whether, you know, because if I were, you know, sort of like stepping into this role, like as a paid consultant, I would say, you know, hey town, you know, what are your goals and objectives for this program? I would presume we want to engage in this effort, not to create a plan. Although I'm a planner, I'm really averse to plans that sit on shelves, and I'd rather really focus on specific actions that we can take, and, you know, whether, you know, we have the capacity and resources to do them. You know, what are they? Are they short term, medium term, long term? What are all the sort of funding and other, you know, capacity related issues to advance them? And then ultimately, do they address the goals that we've laid out in the initial part of this process?
Absolutely. And some of that might fall from this PowerPoint, which now feels like it's getting amped up, but it's just a pretty lame PowerPoint. But we can dig into anything that's not answered if you have follow-up questions. So do I have screen share? Not yet.
There we go. Shouldn't.
Okay.
I'm going to go on mute only because I've been told I have a noisy fan in this laptop that I just remembered. So I apologize if I've been loud for this conversation.
So this is kind of a 101 presentation. So if any of this is not new to you, please forgive me. But just so we're all on the same starting page. Can you all see my screen? Wonderful. Okay, so quickly I'll go over the basics of what Sustainable CT is, walk through the certification process. So if that does make sense for you, these are the steps to take. I'll talk a lot about actions today, and I love that you are action oriented. The whole program is just action. So I want to walk through what an action actually looks like, and then talk about some support services that are available to you in Kent now that you've registered to join the program. So as you know, Sustainable CT is a statewide municipal certification program intended to help towns advance their overall sustainability. And we take a pretty broad look at sustainability. So it's more than the traditional environmental sense, so that's an included topic area, but we're thinking about all things that make a community whole: arts and culture, public health, housing, transportation planning. Really, I was hearing all of the categories in your various backgrounds. So that was really amazing. So you're well set up to tackle the broad look of sustainability that the program is asking towns to move through. At the core of Sustainable CT, we have a menu of actions that you can pick from. There's lots of flexibility to pick actions that make sense to you. Maybe it's things you've already done that are planned or underway in Kent, or things that have always been on your bucket list that you want to do and you weren't sure how to start or where to start, or you just needed some resources to begin. We try to lay that all out for you, and I'll review an action so you can see what I'm talking about there. But really, the action's set up to be fairly straightforward. We have sustainability actions. They're best practices. They're broad. Do the actions, you get points, and at the end of the day, you can get certified. If, again, that's a goal. This is our mission statement and definition of sustainability rolled into one. And I won't read it, but it's really just reinforcing that broad look of sustainability. So the actions in the program fall within these 12 different categories. And again, the theme here, we're looking at the really extensive look of sustainability. So we've got equity, local economies, land and natural resources, health and wellness, and so on and so forth. A requirement of the program to get certified, and we currently offer 2 levels of certification, bronze and silver, is that you do one action in each of these 12 different categories. The action's up to you for most cases. And within these categories, 12 categories, we have 70 actions and hundreds of sub-actions. And you just need to do one 5-point thing to have the whole category be covered. So it could be that there's an area in your town that you're going to hit a home run. And there might be other areas that you're new and you're just starting off. So you want to sort of dip your toe into that and then build from there. There's one required action in the program, and that is action 1.1. It falls in that inclusive and equitable community impacts category. It's optimized for equity. And that we have an equity toolkit that we've developed that walks you through a series of steps to meaningfully engage with those who aren't usually at the table in your town and complete any other action in the program with people rather than for them. So it could be that you're applying this equity toolkit process to developing an open space plan or holding a sustainability event or whatever it is. You've got 70 options that you can pick from to apply your equity toolkit to. So that's the one required action. And then you do one action of your choice in the other 11 categories, and you hit 200 points for bronze or 400 points for silver. And there are over 2,000 possible points. So there's lots of different ways to move through the Sustainable CT framework. Each action was designed to have as many benefits as possible. So you can see these as you look through the various actions, and I'll show you them later on. And it might be a way to sort through. It's a big menu, but you might know that you're particularly interested in outcomes of health and of positive health and wellness. So you could zero in on the actions that would lead to that benefit, and you'd likely see a string of other benefit icons associated with that. So that's a possible thing that you might use, and you might never notice these as well, but just wanted to put that out there. And you are in the program, so we hope that you might receive some benefits from participation. So this is a recognition program. So if you are certified, you will be recognized in your peers as a sustainability leader in the state of Connecticut. We launched the program in November of 2017, and since then have had 3 years of certification cycles, and 61 towns have achieved either bronze or silver designation, which is really amazing. We're still new, towns are still learning about the program, and towns are getting certified. And it's,
hey, Jess,
Yeah.
I got to pop in for 1 second.
Yeah.
We're trying to reboot the Wi-Fi. So I'm hoping that the meeting doesn't disconnect. I'm now, as you guys can see, on 2, and this will look weird because I'm now sitting in front of my computer and in front of my phone. But I've hopped over to Cell. I'm hoping that it doesn't disconnect the call. If it disconnects the call, everybody just, hop back into the Zoom and we'll reconnect everybody. But me being on the computer is holding up most of the building to try to get back on internet. So if we lose one of me, hopefully the other of me will stay. If everybody gets bumped, just dial back in and we'll go from there.
A quick question on the recording is if your computer is going to stop, will your phone continue to record to the cloud?
I'm hoping, because I'm the host. Let's see. It says that it's recording, so we're gonna keep our fingers crossed.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Should we dive back in?
Yes, thank you so much, and sorry for the hiccup.
Oh yeah, no worries. Hopefully this works out and we don't all lose each other.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me go back in here. There we go. Is that up for everyone?
Yep.
Okay, great. So again, this is a recognition program. 61 towns have gotten certified, and certification, I just want to point out, lasts 3 years. So for the towns that got certified in our first crop of, first cohort, basically, they're actually up for recertification this year. So it's an exciting milestone for the program where towns are now seeking recertification and going through that next cycle. Which is great. So we are new and we learn as we go, and we learn with towns, and our unofficial mantra is this is a program for towns by towns. The recognition, it's bragging rights essentially, but it is a way to show off your sustainability chops, and to have something that you can hang your hat on. And when we first were launching the program, this is just a little anecdote. I was speaking with a woman at a conference, and she was interested in sustainable CT, and she was moving with her family to Connecticut from another state, really had no preconceived notions about the state, didn't know where to land. She and her husband were each working, an hour apart. So somewhere within that realm of the Venn diagram between the two job locations, but she didn't know where to go. So without me saying anything, she was thinking, I'm going to pick a town that is at least participating in sustainable CT because it shows that they're active in things that I value. So I thought that was great. That was like a little gold nugget to hear someone say who was new to the state. And it's possible, as people are moving around with the pandemic, that this can be just another feather in the cap for Kent, showing that this is, a value in town and a value that many people do share and want to participate in. As a registered town, you are eligible for 99.9% of all of our resources, which do include funding opportunities. So I'll talk more about those resources later, but I want to let you know you're not on your own, unless you want to be. If you want to do this within your team, within your town, and never reach out to Sustainable CT or our partners for support, that's fine. But we're here for you as much as you'd want, including supporting you financially. We really do want to help you succeed and meet whatever your goals are within the program. And another one that I want to just flag before we move on is the partnerships aspect. And there's a community to the south of you, New Milford, that really has showcased how Sustainable CT can help a town forge partnerships and really come together. And I'm talking about New Milford because we do actually have a recording of their story. They presented their work to date at one of our monthly coffee hours at the beginning of the year. And I'd be happy to share that with you if you feel like watching a recorded webinar, which is not always the most interesting thing, but they really do a great job of telling their lessons learned, how they're sharing sustainable CT amongst various town commissions, departments, different organizations in the community. They have 30 people on their sustainability team, and the 2 volunteer co-chairs, I always think of them like the Pied Piper. Wherever they go telling the story, people are joining them and really using this as an opportunity to come together and really form a new New Milford, which is really exciting. So I can send you that video. I can send it to Eugene if you want to forward it around, if that's of interest, or I can show you where it is on our website as well. So I just wanted to show this map. This is from our homepage, and I can dig into the website too, but I always just like to have things pulled out in the presentation. We actually have 121 towns that are registered in the program. This is slightly old, still 61 who are certified. Your blue dot is not up here on this map, but it is on our live map. Those blue dots are towns like Kent. So you've registered and you're either figuring out how you want to start or things are underway. Those that are bronze or silver shaded have achieved one of those 2 levels of certification. And what's really neat about the towns that are certified is you can go in and review their certification reports. So you can see all of the plans, all of the policies, all of the photos from events. Whatever it is that town got certified, you can go in and review. We have but just about 2,000 actions in this learning library, and it's something I use all the time. Town says, what's a good poet laureate ordinance? Well, let me send you some examples. Do for this natural resource and wildlife inventory. Well, I can send you 5 great examples. So we pull from this all the time, and more communities are using it as a searchable feature. So you can look for the town itself, or you can search by action. So here's just an example. You could click on the town of Wethersfield, see they got certified in 2020. They got 520 points. You can go in and see everything that Wethersfield did to get certified. So if certification is your goal, these are the steps to get there. And you're actually on step 3. So you passed your resolution, you've got your team in order, you've registered, and now you probably would want to see what your base is. Where are you at, and where do you need to move forward to achieve bronze or silver? And you would say, I want bronze by this year, I want silver by this year, and sort of plug the gaps from here. So we have a a list of actions. I'll show you them on our website. They say exactly what you need to do and what you need to submit. We give credit for past action. So you take a look at what the actions are, see what you've done, and maybe you need to do a couple of tweaks to get them in ship shape. Maybe you're good to go and you just need to pull the documentation together. Or maybe you haven't done it yet, but you're interested in doing it. But anyway, you sort of figure out where you're at. There's at least one action, really at least two actions that you have not yet done. That would be the optimize for equity. And that's, again, that process of intentional inclusion for any other action that you're working on. So you have to do that new action and then the equity process. And I hope that makes sense. We can dig into that more if you'd like. But you do that work, and that takes a couple of months to really form some meaningful relationships with people and connect in a real way and learn how your work on whatever particular action you selected can really benefit the community. And then you look at our certification requirements of one action in every category. Maybe you've got that done based on work that the town has completed in the past. Maybe you don't. Maybe you haven't hit that 200-point threshold for bronze or silver, and you just sort of plug the gaps based on what's interesting to you, what's meaningful and important within the community of Kent. This is what certification looks like. And I was looking at this morning thinking, my goodness, look how close these people are standing together. We would need 10 stages to make this happen down the road. But at any rate, in 2018, our first year, we had 22 towns get certified, a mixture of bronze and silver towns. We had 32 towns get certified in 2019 and 17 towns get certified in 2020. So during COVID, we had towns active, very active, even 5 getting silver, our highest level, which was amazing. We really weren't sure what to expect during COVID because COVID's obviously the priority. But what we were seeing that was pretty inspiring and sort of made us feel really good were towns using the program in part of their recovery and response. So building community gardens, helping out the main street, doing things to support the local economy, and helping people get through this rough patch. So that was really cool to see. And we obviously didn't have an in-person event, so we get to see some photos of things that were happening out during 2020. So this, we don't need to dwell on this slide, but I have it in here just to tell you that the program is iterative. We're always changing based on feedback we get from towns, based on sustainability, best practices, what's happening at the state. We try to keep our ear to the ground and learn, how we can continue to improve the program because it needs to continue to improve. So usually the program changes are small. We might add more flexibility to actions, add a new action here or there. In 2021, we did release several new components, more actions, more categories, and some more flexibility in terms of the look back period for past action that you might have done. And that was all based on feedback that we heard from towns. So you don't need to worry about what the program used to be. You see the program currently, but just know that every year we'll be tweaking it ever so slightly, hopefully just adding more flexibility and more opportunity for you to do new stuff within the town. So I actually will shift gears here and go to our website, and hopefully I'll take you with me. Oh, I hit the escape button and that didn't work out. All right, can you see the website? Okay, so I just wanted to talk about an action since it's the only thing I've been sort of on repeat saying action, action, action. But before I do that, this is our website homepage. That map I discussed and showcased is right down here. So you can go in and see what's what. You can filter by action. You want to see every town that got points for engaging in watershed protection and restoration. You can do that and go in and read the report. So that's a pretty cool feature. But I want to show you an action. So back to the homepage, actions and certifications. Hopefully I'm not making you seasick here, but I want to show you a bit on how to navigate it because I have heard that our website is overwhelming. So here are the actions. And there's one other thing I want to show you while we're here is this action overview worksheet. I'm not going to click on it, but this is all of our actions in one Google sheet. So if you like spreadsheets, this has got all of the actions and the requirements in one spot, which might be an easy way or an easier way to do that first assessment of where you are or where you want to go and just track. I'm not necessarily a spreadsheet person. I've I hate to say it, and I hate to say it on Earth Day, but I've got all the actions printed out, double-sided, so it's a lot. But that's really just to help with the reviews. At any rate, now
I'm
I've just,
equally embarrassed to say that I am a spreadsheet person, very much so. And they used to call me the Lorax at OEMS because I was always on everybody about printing paper. But I did print the spreadsheet double-sided. But it is very useful. It gives sort of this linear view of everything that it sort of spoke to me.
good. I'm glad. So we've tried to make sure we've got things for all types of learners and workers, and you can add columns to that if it's helpful, of like status or assigned task. At any rate, if you scroll down here, you'll see basically our action lists, and I'm going to collapse that. But you can see over here, total points. There are over 2,000 points possible, and we're looking for 200 points for bronze or 400 points for silver. So there's lots within this accordion menu here. These are all of our action categories. These will look familiar from that slide. This 13th here, this is where we have our innovation action. And it's not required, but it's a place for you to tell us what you're doing that might not be on our list. That's pretty, well, innovative, that you want credit for. So it's sort of a catch-all. And we try to use this to learn what's up and coming and what we might consider for future years. But any one of these action categories, you can go in and see all of the various components. So here we go. In this category 4, vibrant and creative cultural ecosystems, we've got these various actions that you could do. So you would do one 5-point thing from this category to satisfy that requirement. And you could pick any one of these and work through it. Every action has an action description, which is essentially the recipe for what you need to do. I consider this page to be like the cookbook. Here are all the recipes. And if you wanted to work on this particular action, you would follow the steps that we lay out here to the T, or what you're cooking won't taste good. So it's very much like a reader comprehension exercise. And I often get questions from towns, and this is not a slight to anyone because these things they are long. There's a lot of information here, but I often get questions that I can answer by copying and pasting what's in the action. This is what we use to answer questions. It's sometimes, if you have questions, please ask. Maybe we need to be more clear in the ask. And we're still, again, refining as we go. But every action description has a template that looks the same as this. You'll see here the different benefits that we discussed earlier and the different points possible depending on which elements of this particular action that you do. So you could do something and get 5 points, 10 points, or 15. For full transparency, we tell you how we've changed an action in the past. I would not look at that unless you're just interested. It might just be confusing for you to know what we've updated, but it's a rolling program, so you can work on it at your own pace whenever you want. So you might start something this year, something comes up, you don't touch the program for a year, you might want to see what's changed. So we'll let you know what's changed. And again, all of the edits to actions are made based on feedback that we're receiving from towns. But the action then goes on to talk quickly about the objective. And then what I think is the most important part, which is the what to do, which also tells you what you need to submit. So depending on what you do, you can know however many points you might expect to get. So if you create a tourism and cultural asset map, you're going to get 10 points. All elements must be completed to receive credit. So you've got to do everything that's under this. We tell you exactly what to do. And then we tell you exactly what to submit. Here it's a worksheet. If you submit this worksheet in its entirety, you can expect the 10 points. If you just let's just say you have a map and you send us the link, that's not going to work. We're going to need to have this worksheet. If you want to submit the link as an accessory, that's totally fine. But we try to review these things impartially. So if we've asked for this, we're going to be looking at across all towns, not just saying, we love Kent and they sent this map and the map's really good, so we're going to give them the credit, but in Cornwall, no dice, they're not going to get it.
And that also makes it easier for us, like if we go and search on a map, tourism and cultural assets in the map, we'll see all of those towns that have done this this action. We'll see their worksheets. So we're looking at similar, same to same information, correct?
Correct, especially after this year. So a lot of these worksheets were built in the 2021 updates to make it a little bit easier for the reviewers to review. We have this is kind of in the weeds and hopefully not too much information, but we have over 50 external reviewers who help us look at the actions when you submit them. They're all volunteers from state agencies, nonprofits, academia, people who are experts in whatever the particular action is, because we want to give you good feedback. And sometimes, well, the reviewers are volunteers and they might be looking at 20 different actions of the same thing. And in actions where we've asked for lots of little bits like this one, we have found over the years that if we just ask for a worksheet, it's easier to pinpoint what we're looking at. So yes, you will see past things. Some things might look a little different because we're sort of in that like intertidal zone of some action changes. But hopefully it's not too confusing and it's pretty clear cut.
Hey, Jess, I'm just gonna hop off your presentation for 1 second. You can leave it up there. Amanda and Jimmy both have hard stops at 11.
Okay.
So I think it would be good to just have you finish the presentation, and then because we're recording this, so they'll be able to see that recording.
Sure.
And then we'll put out Leanna, you and I can maybe have a call later today, and we can put out either a doodle poll or just since it's a small group, just a quick email for the next meeting. And at that meeting, we'll sort of head to the next piece, which I think would be setting some goals. But I think, Jess, if you want to go on with your presentation, does that sound good to you all, so that you can come back and watch it if you want? Instead of, sort of stopping here. Is that good with you, Jimmy? Since you have to hop off. And
yeah.
Okay.
So dive back in, and I'll be faster now.
Okay.
Okay. All right, and we were on this. So essentially we just lay out everything that we're looking for within this action description here. And if you read through it, it might become tedious as you read action by action, but hopefully it just reinforces what we're looking for. And we tend to be overly wordy. So we've heard a lot of questions. So we try to put in the answers to the questions that we've heard within each action description. So at any rate, we've got some other elements in each description, timeframe for credit, partners, information on potential collaborators. We have funding that might be available from us and or from third parties, which we can't guarantee that you're eligible for. But when we see funding opportunities, we try to post them so that you can see them if you haven't caught them via other email listservs you're on. We have resources, including toolkits, calculators, guidance documents, organizations, relevant programs. If you're not sure where to start, these could be some helpful groups, but we also can make connections with the various partners that we've worked with to help shape these actions. We've got language on the benefits, and then at the end, we have some success stories that will pull you right to those certification reports. So you can search via the map, or you can search via the success stories. And one little caveat, we changed all the action numbers this year, so it's going to look a little funky because we moved our equity action from last till first because it's the only required action and it makes sense to do that, which changed everything from there on out. So things will look funky, but it will take you to the right spot. Okay, so that's the anatomy of an action, and I'm going to flip. I think I'm going to flip to my PowerPoint now. I think I have to stop the share and start the share. Thank you for bearing with me on that. And I just wanted to talk about the resources for you and then wrap up. So again, we're here for you. If you have questions, please email me or call. This is my job, is to work directly with towns who are in the program. So do not feel bashful. If all of you want to call me, that's fine. And again, to pick on New Milford, I did a meeting with they had 20 people, I think, on this call. And I said, connect with me. You don't need to, if you don't want, pass it up through the two chairs to filter it. If you just have a question on the action you're working on, call. And the second we close out the Zoom, somebody called, which was great. So it's all good. We are here for you. We have different consulting services available to help you with various actions, and these are all free. So we've got equity coaches on our team that can provide support on our equity actions or anything else that's happening in town, and you want to work with a coach and have a private conversation with a professional in this realm. It doesn't need to be related to sustainable CT, but it could be. We say 4 hours of free coaching time, but if you need more or you need less, that's okay. We just use the 4 hours to help us with the budgeting. Another example is we've worked with the Nature Conservancy to offer community resilience building workshops in a town. Many towns are taking us up on this every year. It's a really cool opportunity to have TNC come in, run a facilitated half-day session, virtual or in person, assess your climate vulnerabilities, assess your strengths, and come up with a report that identifies those vulnerabilities, as well as identifies action items that you might take as a community to reduce vulnerabilities and build on strengths. And the great part is TNC facilitates the session and they write the report, and you can walk away with at least 2 of our actions completed with that project, with that free consulting, I should say. There are others, and I won't go into them for the sake of time, but we also have an active events calendar where we have webinars that we host. We have things that we hear about that relate to the program or sustainability concepts more broadly. The calendar is always full, and we try to keep it that way. So there's lots of opportunities for you to engage in various things that could be of interest. And really important, we've got fellows coming on. So we'll have a fellow working full-time for 400 hours this summer. We say 10 weeks, they might stretch it out. Basically, they get 400 hours. So they'll be at Northwest Hills Council of Governments providing direct support if you want it. They can help you identify what you've done. They can help you get actions uploaded. They can attend your meetings if the scheduling works out. And the woman we're bringing on to be a fellow at this COG, she seems awesome. Really am excited to be working with her. And hopefully you can keep her busy if you want. Because my goal is that the fellows are always as busy as they can be and they get as many experiences working with towns as they can. Because it's a pretty unique opportunity to get to work with many different communities within a region. And last thing up there is the Community Match Fund. This is the funding mechanism that we have to help towns complete actions. So very quickly, because I know some people have probably already left us, it's a dollar for dollar matching program where we'll match up to $7,500 per project for things that align directly or indirectly with one of our 70 plus actions. And again, you saw one of our actions is invent your own action. So there's lots of flexibility here. I will say that our current tranche of funding is more geared towards energy related projects, energy efficiency and renewable energy, but there might be some wiggle room for things that are not related to energy. And I would defer to the community match fund manager on our team. And I'd be happy to connect you with them if you had any ideas or thoughts or questions. So we launched this community match fund in September of 2019. So the bulk of the work has happened during COVID, which again, not sure how communities and individuals would respond to a matching program, but we've had over 90 projects happen during that time. The average project budget is $15,000. We've had over 3,000 donors and more than $1 million raised. That's half from us and half from small dollar donations in communities. So it could be 15, 20, 25 bucks, whatever it is. We've had over 53 towns have community match fund projects take place. And you can see here, several towns have had many different projects happen and there's no cap. So as long as we have money, you can be running projects, and a town can have multiple projects operating as long as the project leader is different. Again, more than 3,000 donors, lots of money raised and growing. The average donation is $50, $160 in the median of 50. So this is a donation map from across the state and across the country. And there's actually the world. You can pan out, so anybody can be giving. But the real goal is that people are donating to projects in their backyard, that someone has a cool idea that they want to see happen, and everybody chips in, and they have this sense of joint ownership of whatever it could be, like a community garden. I want to have a community garden. I have no affiliation with Sustainable CT, but my town of Kent is in. All right, so I can propose that we're going to have a community garden. I need $3,000. So I've got to raise $1,500, and I'm going to ask my neighbors, hey, we're going to get a community garden. You want this? Can you give me $10? Can you give me 20 bucks? And then you go from there. This is what it looks like. The intent of the match fund is to be easy to use. So it's not this big grant process where it takes 2 months to write, you wait 6 months to hear back. And then in another 6 months, you get the first check. This is fast. So the projects are up off the ground within a couple months of starting. And that includes the fundraising time. So you draft up a couple of paragraphs, you've got a budget, maybe a photo to make your page attractive, and then you're on your way. We work with a group called Patronicity that can help you figure out how to best tap people and make the ask for donations. And they've been a great group to work with. And we found that many times towns are raising more than their goals, which, to be fair, I didn't necessarily expect, especially during COVID. But it's been cool to see people really connecting at a truly local level and building things that they want. So the goal of the program is, it's not for us at Sustainable CT to say, here's money for solar panels. If you want them, you can have some money for it. This is for you to say, we really want this thing. This is important to us. This means something to us. It will bring us together, and we will give you half if you can come up with the other half. So anyone in town can lead a project and propose a project. So it could be the staff, or excuse me, town staff. It could be an individual who has no affiliation with Sustainable CT, your school, community groups, whatever. And you're in the program, so you've registered. So again, anyone is eligible from this point on. And we're really grateful to our funders, and that's it. So I know some people have left us. So if any of you have questions, happy to take them.
Just so the group is aware, the Northwest, Jess mentioned the Northwest Hills COG as far as where that fellow is going to be out of. That's our council of governments that we belong to. So it's sort of it's the New England version of a county government. That's the best way I can describe it, because we're special in New England. So we don't really go by county governments, even though we have 8 counties, we don't use them. And they're a great, great partner. They've been a huge mentor to me coming into the position. And there's a lot of stuff regionally that if we weren't part of the COG, we wouldn't as a town be able to support it financially. So they're right in Goshen. So if, having that fellow so close by, I think is going to be a big advantage for us, for sure.
Jessica, I have a question for you, just kind of as your overall experience with this program. Obviously, Connecticut has some large cities. Connecticut has some tiny little rural towns. So in your experience with towns attempting to undertake the various types of projects, what has been your experience watching a small rural town kind of like Kent, and and also Kent has a very fluid population. We're pretty thin in the winter, and then in the summer we burst at the seams. We have a lot of part-time residents. We have a lot of very elderly people. We have a lot of tourists who who come in and out of town. But then we also have a very a weekend population, a lot of vacation homes. What towns have you seen undertake this that might look more like Kent in terms of their undertakings and what kind of success they've had?
That's a great question. And we've had several very small towns move through the program and get certified. I didn't get the sense that they had such a fluid population. So I'm thinking about communities like Cornwall, Roxbury, Scotland in Eastern Connecticut, Ashford in Eastern Connecticut. these are very, very teeny towns that do not have a lot of municipal staff support. And most everything gets done by committees, by commissions and volunteers who are active. And we usually hear from towns that, especially if they're smaller, that it's pretty overwhelming at first. But once they get going, it becomes more palatable. And I think part of that is just because the menu is so
Right.
big. There's so many actions, there's
Yeah.
so many sub actions.
Mhm.
And
I
the
was,
intent- oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I was just kind of thinking in terms of, obviously, if you live in, New Haven, you could, or Stamford or Greenwich, there's a lot of people that you can lasso in to help you out. Your
Mhm.
Chamber of Commerce is enormous. A lot of this work has probably already been done or started in some way or another. But I'm just thinking in terms of us, we're not going to be able to dive into 14 different projects at once, and we're going to have to pick and choose
Yeah.
and take very manageable bites. And I'm kind of actually maybe even looking for, what towns that you think look like us that we might want to talk to and say, how did you do it? Where did you start? I mean, I looked, one of the things you had up was a map. Well, we've already got a lovely little town map with little cartoon pictures of all of the tourist sites and things to see. And, Kent is really only one street long anyway. So it's like,
In some places, the actions will be a lot easier. Like Ashford did a fleet inventory, and it was just a couple cars. Whereas like Bristol had pages and pages of Excel.
exactly. So, Jean may be able to say, oh, we've done 18 of these things and I can put them on one piece of paper.
Well,
Yeah, absolutely.
guess-
And I think one of the advantages of being such a tiny town is exactly that. Like if we do a fleet inventory, it's going to
Yeah.
take me 10 minutes to walk over to the garage or
Yeah.
ask Rick, and he's got a
Right.
spreadsheet of the 7 trucks that we
Yeah.
have.
But then,
I guess I actually had a question for Jean. Is just going into this, has there been any talk yet of like what anyone wanted to do, or what anyone has any, just even going towards the certification, has it been brought up about any
Sure.
project ideas at all?
Like at the Board of Selectmen level, or
yeah,
they were very much like, okay, you guys are going to do your thing, go do
just
your thing.
open, just like wide
Yeah.
open. Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
that's what
the
I,
one, I think the biggest intersection that we'll have is with the Conservation Commission.
Mhm.
Obviously a lot
Right.
of the environmental action items and categories are intersecting there.
Yeah.
And they were concerned about their ability to manage I originally was hoping that it would come under the Conservation Commission, but they sort of opened my eyes to their limitations, and they have their projects and their focus areas that they want to do. So I'm really hoping they're going to have one person from conservation be a member of our team. So that'll be that bridging that gap, because
Right.
Conservation Commission is very important to a lot of the categories here. And
right.
from the sort of feeling of overwhelmness, when I spent a couple hours probably on a Friday or Saturday night with that spreadsheet, and I just started like thinking about, and I know some of you are coming from a different perspective having just moved here, but I think you also do come with expectations and hopes for your town that you live in. So even though there's the longevity isn't there, I think we all have expectations and hopes. And so I sort of just sat in a very purposeful, quiet time and really just looked at that spreadsheet and thought about what am I connecting with? And I started highlighting some of the buckets. I actually started crossing off some of the buckets, and it really helped me all of a sudden dial really far in and come out with a completely different, this is doable. Like I see how this is going to more sort of layer onto our capabilities as a small town, our capabilities as a small group, our capabilities as a small government. And so that process really helped me. I don't know if And if you guys want, we can, the town can be the printing press. I know a lot of people don't even have printers in their homes. So if people wanted hard copies of stuff, I'm happy to make copies and meet you at the transfer station or on the front stoop, or hopefully in the building soon. So that's just sort of 2 cents on how I got over that feeling overwhelmed, because I felt overwhelmed when I initially printed that spreadsheet out.
Well, that's what I was saying. I think, we obviously this is not something one does overnight, not even necessarily in 1, 2, or 3 years, but you can get the ball rolling and choose projects, I think, that aren't overly huge, that maybe, us as a small group can bite off and hopefully attract more members to maybe eventually do some of the bigger things.
Yes.
And then we just work at our pace and we get it when we get it. I'm having cat problems, I'm sorry. So I think they hear the female voices, they like that. So
they're helping.
yeah, always. So, I was thinking in terms of trying to overwhelm ourselves and try not to put us on, some pace that's just not attainable with a group of 4 or 5 ladies who, have other things that we're doing as well. But I think maybe one of the first things we do is sit down and try to figure out what have we already done, and or what are we really close to. And one thing I did, that struck me, and I obviously haven't read into your system, your website enough to know, but the diversity component. I mean, being a rural community and where we are and how we're constructed, we're not terribly diverse in the classic sense of the word. And I'm wondering, how do they define diversity?
So we have in our equity toolkit, we take a very broad look. It's not just racial diversity, but Jean, you mentioned there's a natural rhythm. The same sort of people are attending and participating in most committees and commissions in town. So there's lots of people in your community who might not have their voices be heard. Maybe they don't want to participate, or maybe they just don't know or don't have access, or it doesn't work for them. So it could be people who are seniors or youth or LGBTQ, or again, people of different races, or people of different abilities, or different speak different languages. There's lots of different identities that one carries.
So I was just wondering too, because it's on my mind a lot, because my husband and I both work on, housing opportunities for, it's a fairly expensive housing market here. And it's difficult for people who, work in the smaller businesses, maybe don't get paid that well, then they wind up having to commute an hour to get here. And so we're trying very hard to expand housing opportunities for people who don't have all deep pockets. Would that kind of thing count? Or is that something else?
Well, that's an action in the program of expanding affordable and sustainable housing. So that work could fit there potentially, depending on how you're doing it. But with regard to the equity, I love your question, because that's sort of how we're programmed and wired to think, like, all right, what's the solution? For affordable housing, that's equity. In this action, it's the opposite of that. The outcome is the outcome. It's the process that we're looking at. So it would be, maybe you as a team want to think about affordable housing. Okay. So it would be you looking at first who lives in the community, who's in Kent, what are the demographics? Again, beyond racial, but including that as a component. Who's here, who's not here, whose voices aren't usually at the table, and then figuring out how to meaningfully connect to figure out how to work through the affordable housing action together. So, okay, we don't have affordable housing, but we've connected with all these people, and we're finding out now that what we are defining as affordable actually isn't affordable, or it needs to be far lower, or people are really concerned about access to whatever, it could be anything, but it's about not making assumptions, well-intended, and just working together on something. And here's an action example. And actually the equity toolkit, because we casually call that action doing the equity toolkit, so forgive me. But every town who's gotten certified has done it. So we have lots of examples to pull from. And an easy one to read is the New Canaan from 2020. So, and I love theirs. It's like 2 pages, and they wrote basically their story. So it's just about the story. And they had a farmer's market. They always have a farmer's market, and this year they had one during COVID. And I don't know about you, but in our town, our farmer's market was sort of changing every day. Like what you could do. Could you walk? Could you drive? Could you order? Whatever. They're also not a very diverse town. They are a very wealthy town, but they do have many seniors who are in the community. And when COVID set on, they had started this shoppers program for the seniors in town. So seniors wouldn't have to go to the grocery store. So there were so many unknowns at the beginning of COVID of what you could do, what you could do safely. So they had that program in mind. They were starting to have the farmers market. Things were growing. And they were noticing that seniors weren't attending the farmers market, and they wanted to have that be their action. So we have an action, hold a sustainability event, and the farmers market could qualify for that. So that's their action, farmers market. And target population of voices not at the table, seniors in town. So they had a group of some people who work with seniors, senior center, a senior organization, a handful of people come in and say, you know what, let's replicate the shoppers program that we have, and let's let seniors have a special hour that they can shop alone. Those were their assumptions. A small group of people came together and said, we're going to do this for these people. Well-intended, based on some past stories, but well-intended, but still an assumption. We think people want this. So that would not get credit for the equity toolkit. But what they did from there, which was great, is they went and surveyed people, seniors in town, because it's COVID, and that was the mechanism they could do safely to connect, to figure out what seniors would actually want to utilize the farmers market. And what they found out was that the beauty of the farmers market is walking around and like holding the eggplant saying, yes, this is the one that I'm going to have for dinner tonight. And they didn't want to be shopped. People weren't saying they wanted to be shopped for. They didn't want to have a special hour. They would feel like second-class citizens, that they wanted to just, they didn't really know what the rules were because they were changing so much. They weren't sure what to do, how to do it, when to do it. So that was the barrier. So the challenge, the group, the planning group that was thinking about this action, they actually just it challenged our assumption. And because we heard that the real need was just information, that through those channels that they got the survey out, now they could put out more detailed explanations of what the market was looking like that week. So you can park here now, and you can walk through, you can drive through, whatever the changes were, so that people could access it. So the outcome, if you just look at the outcome, was better information about how to use the market, which doesn't necessarily say like, equity, but it's the process that they heard what people needed, and they use that information to make those changes.
So the key to it is including the group that you're trying to help in the thought process rather than thinking for them.
Exactly. With, not for.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
With, not for.
And I'm
like that.
thinking the town social worker could be very helpful, I think, in reaching, she kind of knows what, I mean, I certainly in my living room on Macedonia Road do not know what underserved community in Kent is missing. So I think she would be a tremendous resource.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the library, people have used the library a lot to connect and get the word out. They're sort of our de facto community centers in many towns.
Oh,
That's definitely the case here.
Yeah. I mean, the library is the heartbeat of our town.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I
They
went down
really
that list and I thought, well, the library's doing this thing. The library's really doing a lot of the things that are on that list. So
Yeah.
They're also our arts center. So,
Yeah.
Libraries are amazing. I think people sometimes forget about that, but they really are. They're the connector.
Yeah, they really are. And I really like in that story that you told about New Canaan, how there's this sort of expansive thinking process going on. And because there's, what sometimes I see that there's a lot of people who have lived here for many, many decades. And we do make a lot of assumptions, all in good faith and all for, in good reason. But I think if we challenge those assumptions or expand beyond those assumptions, that's how we're really going to find, root causes and really find broadened, I keep thinking of the word expansive solutions to,
Yeah.
all these things.
In my, that was a lot of my teaching experience. When I said I was doing equity in the schools, I was doing a lot of parent programming. I worked the Center for Arts Education. I did a lot of the reviewing of grants for funding and stuff like that. It was all to try to get parents involved in their children's schooling in New York City. And, I found out just what you were saying. It's just about hearing what works for them, not assuming,
Right.
how, that, oh, if we do this, that will get these parents to come in and be involved. And I know the PTA where I was teaching was just so frustrated because we had a housing project that about half of our students were living in a housing project, and the other half were children of, professionals. And they were just so frustrated that these parents from this housing project would not come to any of the functions. And then, I would put these arts things on and all these parents would come. And they're just like, how do you do this? And I said, well, first of all, I send them a survey and I find out what will work, like, when can you come? And then, you find out like so many of the parents are coming straight from work. So like fund dinner as
Right.
part of the funding, like give them dinner, give their kids dinner. And then, they don't have babysitters. They can't afford to get babysitters. So give them childcare so they can, be with the one child while their little toddlers are being looked after or something. And they
Yeah.
would be, it was really simple, but it was just taking these very simple things. But now then translating that to Kent, I'm very new here, so I don't know who the populations are. So I'm very, but I do have experience in that. And I did look through the equity, whatever it was called, the work, the toolkit. And it was just so similar to all the stuff I've been trained in
Oh,
that.
that's excellent.
So yeah, I'm really familiar with it.
It's funny because when I look at Kent, it's sort of in a backwards way. Kent has a lot of a very active, robust elderly population. And in many ways, their needs are met because they're active and they're vocal and they're out there. It's the younger people that we don't hear from. So, frankly, I do feel that way, Jean. I don't know if you perceive that sometimes too, that, it's the younger people who, we're trying to attract younger people to town. We're trying to attract families. I always worry about like the Kent Center School. You lose, at one point there was talk about consolidating some of the schools and whatnot. And I thought, you lose your school, you lose your town.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that really worries me. And I keep thinking we're just going to be a town that's predominantly older, wealthier people, and that's not sustainable.
No.
And
that's not vibrant.
Yeah, and with Kent Affordable Housing, we're desperately trying to make housing opportunities available for people with children to live in Kent and work in Kent. And to me, it's almost that population that needs the outreach.
That's really interesting. And I think you're hitting an interesting mark. And my son is 26 years old and he lives here in town. He lives home, and he's very much an activist and very wanting to be engaged. And he drives all over the state to be engaged.
Right.
And he's recently, in the last year, started asking me about volunteer opportunities and trying a couple of different things. And he's hesitant because none of the other members of many of the groups are in his age group, and that would, I think that's a barrier as far as, obviously young people want to, I think of the word vibe with, because my kids are 22 and 26, but they identify with their same age category. And I can understand why he's hesitant wanting to get involved. So yeah, I think you've sort of hit an interesting little
and then you worry that eventually he'll just throw up his hands and move to a different town where there's more population, more young
Yep.
people, more to do. Whereas here, you know, people move here a lot because they're older and they don't want all that stuff. They just kind of want, you know, to mosey on through. And you know, it's just so different. But I just think about all the different organizations in town and some of the ones I belong to, and I'm like, I'm 57. I'm one of the youngest people on most of the things I'm involved in.
Yeah.
And that says something. And I know there are younger people in town, but you know, I worry terribly about keeping a population in that school. And then I know some of the other towns around here, you know, I think about you know, Janie Hanley. I mean, she teaches at a school, I think they're in Cornwall. They have like 3 kids in the 8th grade.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's
Cornwall, their
just,
census is very low.
yeah, and I just don't want to see something like that happen to Kent with the young people. And to me, that's a focus, and I would like to see us focus on that. You know, we always talk about worrying about the old people. I'm not really worried about them. Maybe the very elderly who are shut in, but we know who
Right.
they are, and the social worker works with them. But you know, and we don't have a doctor in town anymore. Who's going to want to have a family here? And how
Right.
do we get a doctor into this town? I don't know,
Right.
Jessica, if you've encountered this.
The doctor aspect, no,
Yeah.
but actually New Milford was talking about keeping a doctor in town.
Well, they have tons of doctors. They're good.
But that case of wanting to attract or build a community that you can have the different levels, not just a place where you can age in place, but where younger families can come in. That's a pretty common story in Connecticut,
Yeah.
especially where a lot of our towns are very white and very wealthy and aging, and there's no place for young people. Literally can't afford to live there. You have so some could use this program as a way to engage. Maybe there's something cool that your son could take on an action. Do this action.
He's very interested in this whole sustainable CT thing.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
interested.
Well, we
He
need
should
to
be
get
on
him
this
to join our
committee.
committee, and we need to get some men on here too. We need,
Yes.
you know, because there's a different perspective there.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, you know,
I'm going to have them watch the video, and hopefully this will
Yeah. No,
sort of spur him on.
that's really interesting about the younger population. And I wonder if COVID too gives us, you know, an opening, because so many people really did move out of the city because of COVID and realized that they kind of liked it. They liked having some space.
Oh yeah.
For their
I've
kids.
met so many people at the transfer station who have said, we were weekenders, we came in, you know, mid-March, late March, and now this is, you know, in probably late September over the winter. So it's many, many months in, and every single one of them, at least half a dozen, have said, we're never going back.
Well, that was
We're
us.
selling our apartment.
I mean, that's what we were supposed to be, weekenders. And then we moved to California. My husband got a job there. And then with COVID, we were like, well, we own this house. We're renting out there. Let's go to the house we own and fix it up for the few weeks that we'll be in lockdown, which turned into a year.
Oh my God.
You know, like, yes, let's go back to our house. You know, we figured we'd be in California for like 3 years and just come back here, and then finally come back here, and then have an apartment in New York City. We never thought we would leave New York City. But now that we've been here for a year, we're like, yeah, this is really nice. Who needs the city? We can go there on weekends if we need to.
But it is true
Have
that,
it be
you
the
know,
opposite. Have the apartment in the city be your weekend place.
yeah, exactly. Well, there are a lot of older people in town who flip-flop that way, who, you know, they kept their apartment in the city and now they just go in on the weekends to see shows, or when you could see a show, and they live here
Right.
full time in their vacation house.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
Yeah. But, you know, I'm thinking too, like, I've met a number of younger families who've moved in with children, but they're all wealthy and they're all sending their kids to the private schools, to the Montessori and stuff like that.
Right.
And of course, here I am, I send my kid to private school, but it's, but, you know, at the same time, he always went to public school before that. You know, it's how do we keep this alive and going? because I'm going to say it one more time. You lose your school, you lose your town.
Yeah.
And I know that that's been threatened. I know that our regional high school got a lot of there's a lot of concerns there. And how can we keep this going? And, part of the problem is that, while Kent Affordable Housing and Templeton Farms, well, Templeton is taking care of the elderly, but, Kent Affordable Housing, well, it's all rental housing. So how do we get people here who want to buy real estate, and how can we find affordable real estate? And, I think that's a problem, like you said, around the state. And I don't think it's a problem necessarily that this committee can solve, but something that we can work around that. And, try to at least improve other things that might attract families with children, because to me, that's a huge priority here.
There's a program that I've heard about in Warren and I think Washington, and I know that we're a little down in the weeds, but I feel like this is such a great conversation, where a homeowner or a landowner can actually section off a small piece of their property. They get tax credits, they get there's a benefit for them, but it has to be used for affordable housing. And it's either Warren or Washington has had landowners who have wanted to do that and have done it. So that's it's a really, it seems to me, a matching way for a rural community to do that. I think there's a property right after Cobble Lane. It's actually right at Cobble Lane. It's this sort of expansive, it's got lovely views, that then goes down to, heads towards the river. But my understanding is that a developer bought that and they're going to put cottage housing, which is similar to a Brookwoods, where it may be two homes that share one wall, that share like a garage wall.
A duplex,
I'm sorry?
like duplexes?
Well, not necessarily a duplex, because there's only one wall, and it's the garage wall, so it's not a living space wall. So it makes the homes very separated. But I've heard that that's what the plan is for up there. But I've seen some stakes go in the ground, so there's doing some surveying, but that would be closer to, and I believe they're home ownership homes, they're not rentals. So I think that's headed more in the direction of, I think, what we're all talking about, that need. But so those are two options that I've heard about.
We had that in our Pittsburgh suburb. They put up a development that was single family homes, but they also had that kind of housing that you described, and they were called carriage homes. And
I've heard that term too.
They were, again, for sale, and they were beautiful. I mean, you would look at it and you thought it was a huge mansion, and it was just cut in half. But it was a hard sell, and I thought it was more because it was too high end. If you're going to spend that kind of money, you don't want to buy that.
Right.
Whereas if maybe to set it up more like a townhouse, like just a two-sided townhouse, as opposed to what they were trying to build. And then I think they wised up and said, well, we're trying to make this carriage house thing too high end, and people with that kind of money are not interested in that kind of living.
Right.
Because your decks were side by side, and they had to construct a wall thing between the decks, and it wasn't attractive. But so I think there were lessons learned there. I don't know what this person is he trying to make affordable housing there, or is he trying to make high-end cottages, if you will?
Yeah, I think it's affordable, but I don't know. This is all, just secondhand that I've heard. But we should probably, we've been in for an hour, over an hour and a half.
Yeah.
I could, I think we could all probably continue talking and talking.
Right. But I'm thinking, as a first thing, we all just start surfing through that website and just mining it and looking around, not with any kind of an assignment, just to get some familiarity with it. If a project grabs your attention, look at it. I mean, maybe Joanne wants to look at some of the art projects and see what they're all about. And, I know there are a number of artists in town, and I know that a lot of people display at the library, and there are classes and whatnot. And, but, I think we all kind of have, if we were to start looking through that website, kind of areas that are going to be magnetic for us. And just
Mhm.
to kind of start looking around, and then we'll, Jean and I can talk, and we'll figure out when to meet again. And hopefully at that point, people have had some individual time to go surf through the website. And then we can talk about what our priorities are, what we're thinking we'd like to achieve through this, what our timelines might be. And then, maybe Jean, and we could all look at it too from the perspective of, gee, I'm pretty sure the town's already done a lot of work on this or that area. Like, you
Yeah.
pulled up the thing about the town map. I know we have one that Chamber of Commerce, I think, made up. That's,
Right.
you know what I'm talking about, Jean, that
Yep.
map. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
The
that may
passport.
yeah,
Passport.
the passport. Yeah, that might qualify right off the bat,
Right.
some
Right.
things like that we've already done, and our work on the sidewalks.
Right.
Maybe that's a touchy subject.
The eternal work on the sidewalks. We're going to get a shovel in the ground.
Yeah. We fight about the sidewalks around here a lot. This is the kind
Yeah.
of town we are. Should
12
they have
years now, I
granite
think.
siding, or should they have,
These are important things. They're going to be there for a while.
That's
yeah,
right.
well, it's going to take a
We're a
while.
passionate
We've been
community.
working on the sidewalks for 12 years now. We still don't have anything going.
We're getting there.
Anyway.
We have made a ton of progress in the last
Yeah.
6 months.
Yeah, Jean has been making sure that this thing starts moving. So
I am absolutely committed to somehow get a shovel in the ground. But we're making
maybe
good
some
progress.
maybe some buried power lines.
Oh, I
Oh
would.
gosh.
That would be so lovely.
Oh my gosh.
Well, we need to call Garrity up and so.
Right.
But anyway, so Jean, maybe we can talk today or tomorrow, and figure out what and I don't know, we can send out an email. I can get the email list and say what days seem to work for people, times, and move from there, and
Yeah.
just start nibbling around the edges, because we're a small group, so nibbling is about all we can probably do at this point. But
Yeah.
at least figure out,
So-
And I'll definitely take on the homework task of looking at the spreadsheet, which I've already done, and
Mhm.
and figure out what I'm sure that we've already done, identify those, and
Mhm.
what I'm pretty sure, or at least has been started, so we can sort of get a feel of what's already finished, that we can just
Mhm.
walk through the the work of creating whether it's a worksheet or whatever, what we have to do to tick the boxes of
Yeah.
an action, if the work or the initiative is already established. So maybe we'll come out of that next meeting with 5 actions that we can submit to Jess within a couple of weeks. I think giving us a little kickstart would feel good.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's always good to be able to have, there's the pie in the sky goals, there's the goals that we're pretty sure we're going to happen, and there's the goals that we already know are happening.
I should note, when you submit things, we have 2 checkpoints where they get reviewed. And I never mentioned this to a town once, and they submitted stuff in October and called me in January saying, what the heck? But we just don't look at your application, which is basically the back end of our website. You have access to a profile for your town. We have 121 towns. So you sort of use that as your private workspace, and we plug into it at certain checkpoints if you want us to. And that's in April and in August. So in August 24th, we'll have a fall certification deadline. But really, if you've got one action done and you want to get a review of it, we'll do it. And that's really helpful. If you've got all of them done, or 5, whatever, it could be a great kind of mini goal to set, to have something in for that date, just to get a feel for the process of what it looks like.
Do you find that when people submit their paperwork to have, say we've met a goal, that you have to send a lot of them back to supplement whatever they've submitted, that you didn't quite do enough, or we need more of this or that, more paperwork, that kind of thing?
It varies. We say exactly what we want. And just so you know how we review, if we say we need A, B, C, and D, and you gave us A, B, and C, and they were awesome, but there's no D, we'll say, give us D, must revise. So if we've asked for it, that's our measuring stick. Just again, so there's no gray area, and we're all looking at everyone's application the same.
Okay. And Jean, I have a quick question. I hope it's quick about Kent Center School. Do you know, or maybe there's somebody knows, what percentage of the students there are the children of the Kent School faculty versus just people in town?
I don't know, but I bet Michelle would probably know.
Yeah, I'm
Michelle
just thinking, in terms of like, if you were to survey the parents there to find out, what they needed from the town and whatnot. I'm just wondering how many of them we're just talking to faculty from the Kent School, and that's kind of
Right.
not really, they count, but they don't in terms of the overall goals, I think, of this project. And I'm just kind of wondering off the top of my head, how many of that, I know there's a lot of faculty that have kids in that school. So,
Mm.
yeah. So,
Yeah,
wondering.
I with the new head, Mike Hirschfeld,
Yeah.
who's come in, I get the sense already that he is sort of bringing a very fresh perspective, and he has told me a number of times that he really, really wants to create a deeper connection with the community.
Yeah.
And so maybe, hopefully we'll see some changes, and who knows, maybe we'll get a Kent School faculty member on the team.
I think it wouldn't be crazy at all. I
Yeah.
mean, it's, we could certainly, contact Mike Hirschfeld and say, we'd love to have somebody on this committee, can you put the feelers out? Because they have people on everything else.
Right.
And they do that intentionally. That's
Yeah.
very,
Sure.
they push them to do it. So
Sure,
yeah, because they
sure.
want them involved in the community. So
Yeah. I think it would be a good fit for
Mhm.
sure.
yeah, and I can think of a number of faculty members off the top of my head who might want to do it if they have time, but they might
Mhm.
not. They're teaching, they have their own kids, the whole thing. But
Right.
I do think, to me, and I'm not going to push this on people, but I think that, and I don't know if you agree or not, but trying to attract young families to this town would be huge.
Huge.
Yes.
So
Yep.
that's what I would say, just like going forward, not looking back at past actions, but going forward and thinking about, projects, is really focusing on like objectives
Mhm.
rather than just projects. Like, oh,
Right.
this would be a fun project, or this would be a fun project,
Yeah.
because that,
Yeah.
to me, just can get a little out of hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
think
like an objective, like, yeah, bringing more younger families in, or like I said, I'm so new to town, I just don't know what objectives really would be beneficial here. And because I've been so closed in with COVID,
Well,
it's
I
hard to
think you're
get
going to
out,
love this
but
town. There are so many artists and so much art happening in
Oh,
this town. It's
yeah,
yeah,
art is everywhere. So,
yeah.
it really is.
yeah.
Well, I like
So,
it already, even though I don't know anybody, but
yeah.
I
Well, now
just
you
love
know
the
4 more
nature.
people.
Yeah, now I know 4 new people.
Yeah.
Hey, Jess, do you find that teams, when they start to sort of hone in on where they want to head, do they, and I'm just thinking about goal setting, do they generally filter down to, we want to focus for year 1 on these 4 categories or these 2 categories, and they start to work in those categories, or is it done in a different way?
It really varies town by town. So every
Okay.
town has their own sort of makeup of the sustainability team, and it could be volunteers or staff or a mixture. So it's sort of group dependent. And if they have a push to get certified, that certainly changes how they approach the program. So there's no real right way to do sustainable CT. This is, again, just a tool for you to do what you want to do as a town and define who you want to be. But I will send you the New Milford recording. It's 1 hour, and it talks about how they're using this and like structurally setting it up and how they're reaching out to other groups. And they're very truthful, like that didn't work. So we tried something new. So that might be helpful. As
Yeah, I
well.
think that will be very helpful.
Yeah, because they have some of the same problems with population that we do, although not to the, it's
Scale.
yeah,
Yeah, they might
not
be
to the
trying to
scale, but
hire.
well, they have, their high school is only like, I think it's only half full. It's an enormous, beautiful building. They thought they were going to have this population growth. It didn't happen. And they're having, it's a bigger town and that's where we all go shopping and everything like that. But it's still, they're having population issues also, but kind of in a very different way. But
And we encourage towns to connect with each other because we're not towns. I don't know what it's like to run a town or work at a town. But we've got communities that we're constantly connecting via email, and then you can pick their brains on what they're up to and even work on actions together if it makes sense.
Oh,
we have a
that's
good
cool.
relationship with them. I mean, they're doing vaccines for us and
Mhm.
things like that because we can't get them. And there's definitely a symbiotic relationship there. Like they said, if you need to go to a bigger store, that's where you're going to wind up. The
Right.
big grocery stores, the Home Depot, all of those kinds of stores, appliance stores. We spend a lot of time in New Milford, so I would think that they would want to help us, and we can help them. So
Yeah. And from a government perspective, I work with Pete Bass, the mayor, a lot. We met down at Bulls Bridge last summer to talk about the visitors and the visitor population. And he offered, they have a helicopter that does that just goes up and down the river on the weekends in the summer to see where there are hot spots because nobody's supposed to be actually swimming in the river. And we're literally standing at Bulls Bridge, and he said, we can have the helicopter come up, another mile further past our town border. And so they were doing that, no cost to us, enormous cost to put a helicopter up in the sky.
Wow.
And so they were connected with Andrew Fisher, our resident state trooper, so that if they did see some big crowds that were accessing the water, because we had 2 drownings down in New Milford, just south of the Kent border last summer. And so it was just the safety piece was a big concern, but they did that just because we were in a conversation.
I was wondering what that helicopter was, because we bike down there. We go down River Road, we leave our house here and then go down, South Kent Road to River Road, and we see that helicopter. And it's always like, oh, is there something going on? Did someone else drown? We're always so alarmed, but now I know it's just like
trying to prevent more people from drowning.
Interesting.
But at no cost to the town.
But that's great. Yeah.
Just for a conversation. He's been great. It turned out that their new health director is an old colleague of mine from my DPH days. And so we reconnected immediately. And I started talking about vaccine availability because we were coming up when the governor changed the rollout, and we were going to come up on like 12 or 1300 people that all of a sudden we're going to be looking for vaccinations. And just in a casual conversation with Lisa Morrissey and I, she was like, oh, I think we can probably spin up some blocks just for Kent residents. And I was like, wow, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
my son got his from that.
Yeah. Just because we knew each other, and it was literally a catch-up call for me to just say, oh my gosh, congratulations. I'm so glad to have you back in the area, because she had gone down to Bridgeport and was the health director in Bridgeport for a while in the beginning of COVID, and then ended up coming back up here. So I just called her I saw it in the paper and was giving her a congrats. And we just started talking about vaccinations immediately, because that's what we talk about, just that sort of public health sort of stuff. So yeah. And so much networking, and they're a great neighbor, New Milford is. And I'm also thinking, just when you were talking about New Milford, you were talking about a couple of the smaller towns on the other side of the state. It might be just a great sort of outreach and connector to invite one of them to our next meeting. And because we're still in the world of Zoom, it makes it completely simple to do. And to be able to pick their brain as a group during a meeting, I think might be kind of interesting. And also, you know, I find in Connecticut, we used to joke we don't like to leave our zip code. I don't know if you all have heard that yet, but you'll eventually hear it. And I think it's good to, see beyond our zip code, our little tiny region that we have here in the northwest corner.
Yeah, I'm happy to make any connections. I'll follow up, Jean, with an email that has some stuff in it and we can go from there. One other
Okay.
thing, if people want, we have a newsletter that goes out probably more often than newsletters should, but it pulls out things that are occurring that might be of interest. You can read it, delete it, whatever, but if you want, I can add you all to it if you somehow send me your email address.
So I created a Google email group,
Oh, okay.
and it's, I think, am I back online here? I'm pretty sure it's called Kent Sustainability Team at townofkentct.org. No, I still have no, hold on one second, I will find it.
So I did see that. So I'll send it to that Gmail and then
And then it will go to all of us.
Perfect. Okay. And there's another little town that maybe it's closer to Kent than, well, I don't know. Lyme? Have any of you been to Lyme?
I've been there. It's way, way far on the other. It's like
Yeah, it's right by where I live. It's a cool little town. I think they've got newer people coming in. They just joined. They were the last town to join in 2020, but they're sort of being mentored by Old Lyme, their neighbor, who's a bit bigger, got certified prior. And they're underway. So they're a couple months into the process of figuring out how to move forward with it. So that's another dynamic. So I'll send you a couple of examples and you tell me what's of interest or who's of interest and we can make some connections.
Okay. And we should probably look to wrap up because I think and my emergency management director is calling me, and he doesn't call me unless he needs to call me.
Okay. Well, Jean, you and I can talk. Why don't we talk tomorrow? It sounds like you've got a lot going on today.
Yeah, I think the rest of the day is
I have my book group
goofy.
at 4:30. So let's talk tomorrow, and then we can, send out some little doodle polls and stuff to see when people want to meet, and let's just get the ball rolling. It sounds like this can be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And very rewarding, and maybe hopefully really benefit Kent.
Yeah, I'm super excited.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
Jessica, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Jess.
Whenever you have questions, let me know.
Okay.
All right.
All
Great.
righty.
Thanks to everyone.
Bye-bye.
End the
All right,
meeting.
bye.
Thanks, everybody. We're wrapping up at 11:57.